Welcome, and in this section we're going to talk about data loss prevention. Data loss prevention is part of the overall layers of security that the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 offer. This starts with the Azure Active Directory when a user logs in and goes all the way through the layers as you go through the security roles to where you're working with connectors and you have the data loss prevention policies, which we'll be talking about in this section. The primary purpose of data loss prevention policies is to put rules in place that prevent data leakage. Oftentimes, employees and those in the organization that are building flows or using flows don't realize that they might be leaking data from a sensitive source to a less sensitive source. For example, combining CDS data with Twitter in the same flow or application might not be compliant with the organization policies. Data loss prevention policies allow organizations to put rules in place which enforce those guidelines. When you create a data loss prevention policy, you classify connectors into either business data or no business data allowed. Once a connector is in the business data only group, it can only be used with other connectors in that same group. Tenant admins can define the policies from the Power Platform admin portal, and they can define whether they apply to all environments or only to specific environments. In fact, let's look at an example. In this example, Contoso has created a global tenant-level policy that excludes specific environments: shared apps dev, shared apps test, shared apps production. So it will apply to any environment. In this example data policy, Contoso has created a tenant-level policy that applies to all environments except the ones that they've explicitly excluded, as you can see, the shared apps dev, test, and production. And the reason they've excluded those is because those particular ones have their own specific exception policy that's been created. In the Contoso default one, people in the organization can only create applications and flows that have the Common Data Service and SharePoint. If you were to add the Outlook connector, you would add Twitter, Salesforce, any other connector into an application using Common Data Service or SharePoint, that would not be allowed and would be not allow the application or flow to run in the environment. Now, in the Contoso Shared Apps policy, they've included only the dev, test, and production because those have an exception policy applied where you can use the Common Data Service connector, Outlook, Approvals, and SharePoint all together in the same flow or application. Now let's jump into the actual admin portal and real quickly see where we go to manage these. Okay, I'm here in the Power Platform admin portal looking at my list of environments, and you can see that I've got Thrive, Dev, Test, Production, and UAT. These are for a specific project that is being built, and I also have several other organizations. I'm going to go look at my data policies. And you'll see that I've got two, similar to what we had in the example slide that we were looking at. And in this particular one, if I go look at the Contoso Global DLP policy, this one is applied to all environments except the Thrive ones: Thrive, Test, Production, HR, Dev, and HR UAT. Now that means that any new environment created or any existing environment will have this applied to it. You'll notice that you can select all environments, or you can also select only selected environments. Then you go over to the data groups. Data groups define what is in no business data allowed. So all of these can be used together, but they can't be used in combination with the ones that are in the business data only. Now to manage these, you can simply come in here and do an add. And if I wanted to allow, for example, OneDrive for Business to be used, I would just add that connector to the policy. It would remove it from the no business data, move it to the business data only. And now I could create an app or a Power Automate flow that uses the Common Data Service, SharePoint, and OneDrive for Business all in the same component. Data loss prevention policies are just one of the layers of security that you can put in place that provide users with the appropriate guardrails to ensure that what they're doing is kept on track and consistent with organization policies. You can apply these at the tenant level and apply them to all, which makes sure that even as new environments created, your data is safe and users are prevented from doing things that they shouldn't do.